গালাগালিও করে দেয় মাঝে সাঝে। যারা ধরুন একটু ডিম করে থাকে, হয়তো রিস্কায় উঠলো, তারা গালাগালি, তাকে আর মারতে যাবো, আমি মারি, ঝগড়া করি না। কেন আজকে ঝগড়া করবো, আবার পরের দিন আমার রিস্কায় উঠবে না বলে ঝগড়া করে, ঠিক আছে, দুটো গালাগালি করলো।
Would it surprise you to know that in a recent survey, this rickshaw driver, Manoj Singh, was found to be as happy as the average American?
তখন খালি পায়ে দাঁড়ায়, তখন ওই গরমকালে একটু বেশি কষ্ট হয় আমাদের, পা পড়ে, প্লাস এদিকে রোদ্দুর তাপ। আর এমনি বর্ষাকাল ভালো, আমাদের কোনো অসুবিধা নেই, ভিজে গেলেও কোনো চিন্তা থাকে না, জানি আবার শুকিয়ে যায়, আর একটা প্যাসেঞ্জার তুলে দৌড়লে শুকিয়ে গেল। বাড়ি আমার ভালো, বাড়িতে ভালো লাগে, একদিক দিয়ে এদিকে ফাঁকা, হাওয়াও আসে। বর্ষাকালে একটু কষ্ট হয়, ঝাপটা ঝুপটি চারিদিক দিয়ে মারে, তখন অসুবিধা, নাহলে এমনি প্লাস্টিক উপরে আছে, চার সাইডে প্লাস্টিক দেওয়া, প্লাস একদিকে জানলা আছে, ওই জানলাতে হাওয়া ভালোই আসে, ভালোই থাকি, খারাপ কিছু না। এই সকালবেলা ফিরি, যখন ওরা বসে থাকে ওই চার দোকান সামনেই, ওরা যখন মানে তাকায় রাস্তার দিকে যে বাবা এই আসবে, বাবা এই আসবে, তখন ওদেরও মন ভালো লাগে, প্লাস আমাকে যখন বাবা বলে ডাকে, আমার মনটা আরো খুব খুশি হয় আর কি। ওই বাচ্চা কাচ্চা যখন, ওই গরিব বলতে গেলে কি, বাচ্চা কাচ্চার মুখ দেখলে তখন আমার বুকটা এত উঁচু হয়ে যায় যে আমার মতন কেউ বড় লোক নেই। হয়তো নুন ভাতই খাচ্ছি, কিন্তু খুব আনন্দ হয় যে না, কারোর সাথে ঝাঁটি নেই, কারোর সাথে এই যে মিলে রয়েছে, আমাদের খুব আনন্দ হয়। আমরা সবাই বন্ধু।
For hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, people have studied depression and psychological illness. The goal of psychologists was primarily to rid a patient of their problems. Recently, however, modern science has begun to look at how happiness works. What are the building blocks of a life that's not just free of illness, but one that flourishes with a deep and genuine happiness?
When I got into happiness research, it was 1981. It was not a popular field in psychology. People thought it was flaky, that it was loose. A professor said to me, you can never measure happiness. Now, why they thought you could measure depression, which they were all doing, but you couldn't measure happiness, I'm not sure. And then in the 90s, people started getting interested in it, and now it's absolutely amazing how many people are interested.
Magazine articles and books are being written about it. There's even a new field of science called positive psychology, which studies happiness. It became the most popular class at Harvard, with 1,000 kids showing up every week for a happiness class.
The first thing is to realize that happiness can actually help you get your other goals, have better relationships, make more money, do better at the job. People on the job are going to like you better if you're happy. What we've done, and I've done this for the last 25 years, collecting data. So we follow people and look at their moods over time. We've also looked at random samples of people from around the world, who's happy, who's not happy. Then we crunch all these numbers and we say, gee, what really matters?
By studying identical twins, people with almost exactly the same genetic makeup, researchers have discovered that approximately 50% of the differences in our happiness levels is determined by our genes. They call that our genetic set point, or our genetic set range.
Most of us are born with a certain range of happiness that we fall in most of the time. And even when really good or really bad things happen to us, we kind of tend to return to our set point.
And while 50% is genetic, amazingly, our circumstances, like what job we have or how much money we have, our social status, our health, those things that many of us are told to focus on, they only account for 10% of the differences in our happiness.
Most people are kind of stunned at how small that is, but that still leaves 40% unaccounted for. And so our theory suggests that there is a great deal you can do to become happier, and that 40% is left for kind of intentional behavior, things that we can do on a regular basis to become happier. It's very important.
Much of what we believe about the causes and sources of happiness simply isn't true. People overestimate how much impact both good and bad events will have on them in the future. People believe that if good things happen, they're going to be ecstatic and that joy will last a very long time. In fact, they are ecstatic and the joy quickly dissipates. People believe that if bad things happen, losing a lover, losing a football game, losing a job, they will be devastated and devastated for a very long time. In fact, they are devastated for a very short time. In general, people do really good when things go really bad. Sounds like a country song, but it actually turns out to be true.
This is Towning.
Social bonding, social interaction, cooperation is programmed to be intrinsically rewarding to humans. That's how we inhibit our self-interest in order to do something with someone. Otherwise, you wouldn't cooperate. You'd be totally self-interested. We do not behave that way. We're social creatures. Interestingly enough, when you put people into a social exchange, where they're given the opportunity to cooperate or to compete, they will in general cooperate with one another. That cooperation elicits dopamine signals that you can measure in the striatum, just like you were squirting juice or cocaine into them. In other words, the act of cooperating with another human can, in the right circumstances, feel just as good as taking a drug that affects your dopamine system.
You claim to be a player, but I f***ed your wife.
In a culture that often encourages competition instead of cooperation, Michael Pritchard has a unique way of teaching kids about happiness.
Middle school, isn't that a wonderful time when you're all going,
whatever. Talk to the booty, the hands off duty. Talk to the palm, you're not the bomb. Loser, loner, wannabe, whatever. No, dust, shut up. And I think so. I read it on MySpace. Shut up.
I love 8th grade boys on the phone. They go, tight, oh, sick, hey, who is this? Well, I'm up here sweating like Britney Spears on Jeopardy. How many of you every day see a kid here who gets isolated, teased, picked on, laughed at, and has become the target of lots of other kids teasing and bullying? Raise your hands, please. Raise your hands high, high. Look around the room, please. Look how disconnected we get over stuff. I mean, how many of you guys play that video game, Grand Theft Auto Vice City? You run over homeless people. You beat a prostitute to death with a tire iron. You run over cops, paramedics, firefighters. Am I right? Yeah. We love you guys. A great teacher named Helen Keller was asked, "Oh, Miss Keller, it must be hard for you to be blind." And she said, "It would be if I had no vision, because we really see with our hearts." Think about what your hearts are seeing that sometimes disconnect you. Think. And it can be the little words. Just the little words. I was a coach out at Special Olympics. You ever seen a kid run and laugh? Yeah, I was out there at Special Olympics having a little 11-year-old girl who's I'm coaching. Boom, the gun goes off and she takes off running. What a heart, what a spirit. And I hear kids say cruel things to her, but she's a good teacher. She takes off running, she goes, "Yes! Whoa! This is not an Olympic form runner. She's hitting every lane." And she gets all the way down to the finish line, 40 yards in front of everybody, and she stops. And I was her coach. And I said, "Annie, no, come here. You win the gold medal." "No, coach." I said, "No, you don't understand. They're catching up. Walk to me, snap it. Come here." "No, Mike, please." And she turned around and she put her hand out for her friend, who turned and put her hand out for her friend. And then all 6 kids held hands and came across the finish line together. And she goes, "Whoa! Together, we all would win. Together, we all would win." I know that there are kids in this room who have been teased and picked on and left out and isolated. Can I get a volunteer of somebody who can share what it feels like? Big round of applause. Come on down. I'm very proud of you, son. Stand in front of me. I'm proud of you. Tell me what happens sometimes. What do they say?
I have a depression disorder and ADHD, so it just feels like life, it feels like it shouldn't be this hard. It's just like every day after school, you start crying for no reason.
What have kids said to you, Ben?
Nerd, loser, gay, all that stuff.
What has it done to your heart, son?
Just makes me feel really bad.
Is it fair to you?
No,
Is it fair to any kid at this school?
no.
Stop a minute. Not on the football field, not on the basketball court, not in all the best academic classes or languages you have will you see, Benicia Middle, such courage as this. This is the courage you should learn to love and respect and honor. Give his heart a huge round of applause. That's courage, guys.
Joy comes from that connection to others. The best thing we can do for a child is to help them learn love.
Compassion. Richard Davidson told us that people who do a specific form of meditation on compassion and loving kindness can increase their happiness levels to a greater extent and for longer periods of time, even than people taking powerful antidepressant medications.
There are specific meditation practices that have been around for more than 2,500 years, which are explicitly designed to cultivate qualities like compassion and loving kindness. The person we've tested the most in our lab is a person by the name of Mathieu Ricard. He has been a Tibetan Buddhist monk for more than 30 years. He also holds a PhD in molecular biology. And we have looked intensively at Mathieu's brain, both at rest as well as when he is intentionally generating these states of compassion. So there's no obvious change in external behavior. You know, he's just sitting there, and then we give him the instruction to begin the compassion meditation, and all of a sudden, it's like, you know, parts of the brain are on fire. These are areas of the brain which are extremely important for understanding happiness and well-being. And so we are, for example, currently doing studies where we are having people who've never meditated before, and we're having them do very simple exercises, 2 weeks of training in this simple compassion practice does change the brain in ways which are similar to, although not nearly as well defined as what we see in very long-term meditation practitioners. There is some evidence to indicate that we actually change the gross structure of the brain, literally the size of particular cortical areas in the brain change in their thickness. We, through intention, can change our brain.
We ask people to count their blessings on a regular basis. Say every Sunday night you sit down, you write down 5 things for which you're grateful and kind of try to contemplate that. And we found that the students who counted their blessings once a week, every Sunday night, became happier. A couple studies we did, we asked people to commit acts of kindness on a regular basis. You know, they're going out and they're putting change in parking meters, and they're, you know, helping their friend with homework, or was visiting someone in the nursing home, or, you know, really doing real, you know, concrete behaviors. And it seems to me from our experience that the acts of kindness so far have been the most effective.